Okay, y'all, this one's gonna be a short one. I just want to talk to you about this trend about how we need to have security everywhere at every single venue we go to. For example, like 15 or 20 years ago, if you went to a grocery store, there was no security guard. Like, the only place that you had a security guard like 15 or 20 years ago was like, what, a fucking bank? And that was pretty much it, right? But now you have to have them pretty much wherever you go, right? It's gonna be like grocery stores, pharmacies, just like kind of small places like that, Walmart, Target, whatever. These little stores like that. And like, I guess like the other one I omitted was malls. Malls always had like a security team, even if it wasn't all that advanced, right? There was always the joke about like mall cops. Remember there was like that movie, Paul Blart, the mall cop or whatever, and it was based on the idea that like, yeah, these mall cops are kind of like these like people who are just like not good enough to be like police or whatever, right? So they kind of get stuck with the shit role of monitoring the public in this like mall or whatever, right? So they get stuck with like the situation where they have to like monitor the boring people in like a mall because nobody really ever steals anything from a mall, right? Or at least they didn't used to. But now the turns have tabled, right? Basically every place needs you to have security, right? You can't go to a Dodger game or a Ranger game anymore and just go into where you're seated, right? You basically have to get the security pat down, even if it's like this tiny little one. And also you can't go to official government like city places, right? I think in certain courthouses you have to have security checks, right? And also like in schools, right? If you're in a ghetto enough school, you're gonna have like metal detectors and shit like that. I mean, you want to talk about trust being at an all-time low in society, at least comparatively. I mean, there you go, right? At the end of the day, it's really not that bad that they're hiring security. I mean, yes, they have to protect their stuff, but they had to protect their stuff before, right? But the reason it's really sad is because it shows a genuine lack of trust between everybody in society, right? Like, for example, you weren't supposed to ever leave your kid with someone, right? But you could ask the person next to you and say, hey, could you watch this kid for me for 2 seconds, right? And it could just be a kid, it could be like a bag or whatever, but most of the time people wouldn't steal it, right? Now, of course, the general majority of people aren't going to steal it. But the likelihood of that happening today feels like it's going to be higher than ever, right? Integrity and trust feel like they're falling apart, right? I mean, it's not like these companies have just been hiring security for the fun of it, right? I mean, we can say that crime is going down all we want, but at the end of the day, the common relationship between you and the guy that's living next to you, the guy that you see at the grocery store, how much common ground do we all have today? If you're someone who even votes vaguely conservatively, are you really going to have that much common ground with your average NPC or average working Joe? Well, the likelihood is, yeah, sure, if it's the, blue-collar Joe or whatever. But realistically, the common ground that we used to have with everyone is disappearing. The country's become extremely polarized. And so when the country becomes super polarized, they tend to lose common ground, right? You can't have people on the right and left don't see things the same. And when the common ground disappears and people are living in two different realities, pretty much the way that we're seeing right now, trust starts disappearing, and thus security feels pretty warranted, right? Now, I'm not saying that, okay, well, the country's polarized and that's why we need security. That is a really huge stretch. And maybe it plays into it slightly, but that's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying that in society, it feels like we have a genuine lack of trust because the common ground we used to have with people and the common reality we shared and the gap between both sides seeing things the same has gotten so wide. It's justifiable when the country's so polarized that feels like we should be hiring security at places. It's kind of like trench warfare, right? You take out your binoculars and you're like, oh man, I wonder what the other side's doing. They must be scheming, right? I mean, that's basically what people think is happening today. Think about it like this. If you pick someone off the street at random, tried to have a conversation with them, tried to explore how much stuff you have in common with them in terms of just seeing reality the same, the likelihood that you're going to have a huge gap between what you think is going on and what they think is going on in their reality is going to be enormous, especially compared to 30 or 40 years ago, in my opinion. Anyway, this wasn't supposed to be particularly comprehensive, but this is what happens when you have the same country but groups of people living in 2 or 3 different realities, right? I mean, after all, if you watched my video on Sapiens, we saw that trust in our societies is a huge thing. You can break it one time and go ahead and do what you want with it, but after that, nobody's going to want to play with you after, right? Think about our government, for example, right? Think about how much money they've taken from us in taxes, right? And they expect us to want to fund, what, the Iraq War, giving shitloads of money to, like, Ukraine, for example, and they wanted us to, what, go to another country like Iraq and Afghanistan, spend all these mega fuck tons of money trying to prop up democracies over there, right? And then not even achieve anything, and then leave all the fucking equipment there. And we're supposed to be, as the taxpayers, happy to do this? And we're supposed to, what, trust the government more? Are you out of your fucking mind? I mean, Ukraine is the same thing, right? We're supposed to want to give all this money to Ukraine and fund a war that we're not even involved in? And the war that we're not even involved in, we're going to back the team that's pretty much as corrupt as Russia? And that burden's supposed to fall on the fucking taxpayer? Why am I putting all my money into this shit? Why am I supposed to trust my government is going to do the right thing with my taxes, right? Basically, if you think of the government as like a drug addict at all times, the relationship between us giving them money becomes extremely clear. And also, I guess it's funny, if you think about people who are very pro-tax and pro-putting into the system, does that mean they're also pro-drug addicts? Do they want to fund people with drug addictions? Man, this analogy is kind of going hard in the paint here, huh? Anyway, the solution to fix all this is if the government eases off the throttle, right? And stops trying to squeeze everybody for so much, right? Tax here, tax there, tax, right? Well, fuck, my dollar can't go anywhere anymore. And if you looked at my inflation video, you know things have basically doubled, or the value of the dollar has basically halved in the last 28 years. Anyway, the solution to all this is pretty simple. Of course, I started this video off talking about like mall security and grocery store security, which is really irritating because the presence of it is everywhere. But if the government found a way to fuck itself off and ease off the throttle and stop inflating the currency, which they won't, by the way, because it's fiat, but if they took the shoe off the neck of the dollar and made it actually semi-valuable again, which again will never happen, but if they did do that, trust in society would reappear very quickly, because now not everyone's under so much pressure all the time, right? You have a little more flexibility with the dollar that's actually worth something, right? My brother was recently sending me something about like Scooby-Doo, and basically in one of the little episodes, right, that we watched as a child, there was like a little hot dog stand that was like shooting hot dogs at Scooby, but in the background of it, it said 10 fucking cents for a hot dog, and I was just like, bro, 10 cents for a hot dog? Of course, that was almost 60 years ago at this point, and yes, not everyone was making $15 minimum wage, but if the boot of the government came off the necks of the people, things would be a lot easier and trust would probably be restored, maybe not in totality, but it would certainly do a lot of repairing. Wow, who would have guessed? Another video where I criticize the government and recommend less government overall and less taxes.